Greetings, fellow adventurers, and welcome back to my channel. We're thrilled to present to you our video dedicated to Richard Coppin. Enjoy! Richard Coppin was a 17th-century English political and religious writer, and prolific radical pamphleteer and preacher. As we move forward, let's uncover the untold stories and fascinating intricacies of late Ers to late Ers. He was an Anglican clergyman until 1648, or possibly a lay preacher from Berkshire with little formal education. He is known as an associate of Ebenezer Copp, who wrote an introduction to Coppin's 1649 divine teachings. Christopher Hill considers that Copp took most of his theology from Coppin. After the suppression of episcopacy 9 October 1646, he had attached himself for a short time to the Presbyterians in London. He afterwards was an independent. Based on an inward experience in 1648, he was not to exercise a settled ministry. He began to preach in Berkshire. He was constantly in trouble, well documented in pamphlets arising from the 1650 Blasphemy Act. The authorities treated him leniently in the period 1651 to 1655. He first got into serious trouble by preaching on 4 successive days in the parish church of Evenlode, Worcestershire. He had been invited by parishioners, with the consent of the rector, Ralph Neville. Neville, however, brought neighbouring clergy to discuss matters with Coppin in the church, and eventually got a warrant against him for blasphemy. Coppin was tried before Chief Baron John Wilde at the Worcester Assize on 23 March 1652. The jury found him guilty of denying heaven and hell, but Wilde reproved them for their verdict and bound over Coppin to appear for judgment at the next assize. By that time his accusers had fresh evidence relating to Coppin's proceedings at Anstone, Oxfordshire, whereupon Judge Nichols bound him to appear at the next Oxford assize. A debate he had at Burford, Oxfordshire in 1651 was recorded by his counterpart on the side of orthodoxy, John Osborne, Vicar of Bampton. Osborne was a Presbyterian, East Vicar at Bampton from 1648 to 1662. On 10 March 1653 he was tried at Oxford before Sergeant Green. The jury at first disagreed, but eventually found him guilty. Green bound him over to the next assize, when Judge Hutton gave him his discharge. Preaching at Stow-on-the-Wold, Gloucestershire, on 19 March 1654, Coppin was again apprehended and brought for trial at Gloucester on informations before Sergeant Glynn on 22 July. Glynn would not receive the informations, and so the matter ended. About 1650, Joseph Salmon, minister in Kent, had set up a course of Sunday preaching in Rochester Cathedral. Salmon was an allegorist, and is said to have sowed the seeds of ranting familiarism. In midsummer 1655 Salmon went abroad, and his followers brought Coppin from London to fill his place. It is probable that his acquaintance with Ebenezer Copp introduced him to the sectaries of Rochester. At the end of September or beginning of October 1655, Walter Rosewell, incumbent of Chatham, went to hear Coppin preach, and gained the impression that he affirmed the peccability of Christ and denied the resurrection of the flesh. Rosewell, with other Presbyterians, agreed to conduct a Tuesday lecture in the cathedral to counteract Coppin's heresies. A public discussion was held in the cathedral from 3 to 13 December between Coppin and Rosewell, assisted by Daniel French, minister of Stroud, the mayor presiding. Before it ended, Gammon, an Anabaptist, put himself forward to oppose both parties. On Saturday night, 22 December, Coppin was served with a warrant forbidding him to preach next day, and requiring his attendance before the magistrates on Monday. He preached, not in the cathedral, where a guard of soldiers was set, but in the college yard, and in the fields. He was imprisoned on 24 December 1655 as a ranter, a term which is now contested in historiography. Thomas Kelsey, one of Cromwell's major generals then based at Dover, took a harder line with Coppin than previously, imposing 6 months in jail. He defended himself, writing from Maidstone prison a pamphlet A Blow at the Serpent. Another account was that of Walter Rosewell, pushed out as vicar at Chatham. Kent in 1649, in the Serpent's subtlety discovered. Before 26 June 1656 he had been set free by habeas corpus. Coppin's work provoked Edward Garland, vicar at Hartlip, Kent, to reply in kind in 1657, accusing Coppin of heresy. The pamphlet exchange was extended by Coppin's Michael opposing the Dragon 1659. Now, let's shift our focus to legacy and embark on an intellectual exploration of its various dimensions. Coppin and Gerard Winstanley both preached universal salvation, and both began to publish in the same year, 1649. The universalist views of their contemporary, Jeremy White, were not published till 1712. Coppin deals moderately with his opponents. His followers seem to have formed a sect. The tenets of the Coppinists were later given by South. Rogers the Postboy Robin of his Mail, 2nd edition 1706, p. 428. Later he found an admirer in Cornelius Cayley, and a critic in James Relly, an universalist of another type. See his The Sadducee Detected, c. 1764. In this segment, we'll be unraveling the complexities of works and exploring its multifaceted nature. Divine Teachings 1649, The Exaltation of All Things in Christ 1649, Man's Righteousness Examined 1652, Saul smitten for not smiting Amalek 1653, A Man Child Born 1654, Truth's Testimony and the Testimony of Truths 1655, A Blow at the Serpent 1656, Crux Christi 1657, Michael opposing the Dragon 1659. In the next phase, we'll be immersing ourselves in the realm of views and exploring its real-world applications. He believed in universal salvation, the possibility of return to the state before the fall of man, and the equality of women. He treated the fall and last judgment as allegories, and was dismissive of the established church and universities. He is sometimes presented as a moderate ranter or philosopher of ranterism. Christopher Hill shaded his opinion to near ranter. With our curiosity piqued, let's embark on a dedicated exploration of notes and references and its fascinating intricacies. Catholic English Christian Universalists, Catholic English Independent Ministers of the Interregnum, England, Catholic English Presbyterian Ministers of the Interregnum, England, Catholic century Christian Universalists, Catholic century English Writers, Catholic Birth Unknown, Catholic century Births, Catholic century Deaths, Catholic Death Unknown, Catholic Anglican Universalists, Catholic Christian Universalist Clergy. Have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future videos? Let me know in the comments.